Hi there, this is Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. My guest in this edition is Miroslav Wanek, the leader of the top Czech alternative band Jsme, doma, who this year are celebrating 40 years of existence. Jsme, doma have performed in over 36 countries, most notably in the United States, where they've notched up a truly remarkable and unparalleled 800 plus concerts. But Wanek, who's today 62, also has other strings to his bow. He could have entered politics after playing an active role in the Velvet Revolution in his hometown of Teplice. He's taught at Prague's FAMU film school and co-created a highly popular animated series. And Miroslav Wanek and I discuss all of those subjects now in this edition of Prague Talk. You're from Teplice. When you entered your teenage years and began getting into music and art and stuff, was it a bit harder to be an outsider in the regions than it might have been, say, here in Prague?
Yeah, actually, very shortly, yes. But I think it's still like that. It's probably a little better now because of internet and whatever, transport is also easier. But I felt it. I think I felt it kind of strongly, the difference between life on small town and outside of Prague, and when I got the chance to come to Prague, so it was very different,
And did you stand out also for your appearance when you were younger?
Actually, I lived with my grandparents at the time. I was very lucky actually with them because they were very tolerant, and I lived in big house kind of. So I have a lot of space for making music, and we have a rehearsal room over there, and we had plenty of time to practice and plenty of time to meet other people all together and so on, So it was very, very nice with them, and they were very tolerant, They didn't really like that music, or I don't think they even don't like it. They just don't notice what kind of music is it, But it was very funny, actually. I remember a little bit later, when I played a concert, my grandfather came to see that, to watch it, and he was in this kind of suit, and a tie, and with kind of leather bag. And when he was standing in the line to the venue, all the other people, they were staring at him, were really surprised because they thought he is secret police. He's our censor, Didn't really expect it's my relative, but yeah.
I understand that you were actively involved in the demonstrations in Teplice, which took place like in the week before the demonstration in Prague that sparked the beginning of the Velvet Revolution.
Yeah, it was November 11th, actually, 1 week before. There was a 15-year-old guy. His nickname was Onegin. And his sister was small, and she had really some difficulties with her breathing. He was very upset about that, and because of the air over there and everything was very dirty.
The pollution was terrible in North Bohemia in those days.
Bad, and also a lot of chemicals in it. The dirt is bad, but it's not so dangerous as chemical thing. And these communists, they never care about people really. The only thing what they did, they installed a sign like on street, and the sign says inversion, if it was inversion, and it was the only thing, So of course it doesn't really help, the situation. So he was very upset. So he wrote like a flyer, and he said the people can come to the square to fight against the dirty air. A lot of people come actually, and surprisingly, maybe 500-600 people appeared, but that person was not there because they arrested him immediately, and I was in group of people known even before, like of course punk band FPB. Also, we released some samizdat, some magazine Paco. It's a Pataphysic Collegium. And so on and so on. We organized a lot of things before all that. So kind of logical way, we appeared in the middle of the organizers of these demonstrations as well. And especially the third day, We were in front of the building of Communist Party. A lot of police, with exactly the same pictures like 1 week later were here. So exactly the same line of police, white helmets, these kind of sticks here. But in the end, there was some little discussion with this guy, and he promised to make a public discussion on ice stadium, on winter stadium. But 1 week later happened here in Prague, all these things. And the date for the meeting on this winter stadium was November 20th. It was 3 days after what happened here. So we got there, and they said, okay, it's public and you can say whatever you want, and they had microphone like this, and anybody who wants to talk, they gave it to them. But the reality was that only these communists would talked, only this one, and then some chief of whatever factory, and so on. So people were starting kind of to argue about that, and not satisfied with that situation. And in one moment, there was a student. He was from Teplice, but he studied here in Prague, and he was bringing some witnesses about what's happening here. And they gave him the microphone, and he said, well, it's a problem with air here in Teplice, but more important is what happened in Prague now, And once he said this sentence, they immediately switched off the microphone, and all people, there were maybe 6,000 people or something like on the stadium, and all people were like, wow, give him microphone back, blah, blah, blah. And from that moment it was just chaos, there's just no finish of any discussion, any meeting, but the crowd moved to the main square in Teplice, and there was a little well in the middle of square. So this student stand up the well and started to read again the witnesses from Prague, but his voice was very soft. I was standing like maybe 2 meters from him, or 1 meter, and somebody said, "Oh, let it Mira to read it because his voice is very strong." So they took me up the well, and I started to read it all over the square, and immediately after that, I talked to the guy, and he said, "Oh, and then." Občanské Forum, the
Civic Forum
was starting here in Prague, and so it will be nice if you can do like a local offices of this thing. And directly from the well, I went to some room. Some other guy said, "Okay, let's go there to that office, and we can stay there." And we started this Občanské Forum in Teplice, then, and I start to be spokesman, one of 3 spokesmen in Teplice for 6 months from that moment. It's like
To rewind for a little bit and to speak about your music, when you were in your late teens, I guess you had a punk band called FPB, Fourth Price Band. What kind of material were you doing? Was it original stuff or covers or both?
Half and half, I would say, maybe 60 to 40 covers and original. And from the beginning, we heard almost only covers, and the income for us, it was a jazz section here in Prague, and also in connection to that, there was some guy living just across the street from my house, and he was in contact to jazz section, and he introduced me there. It was one thing, and the second thing was he always brings some tapes with some music, and we didn't know the names of the bands. Of course we didn't understand lyrics, whatever, but we just heard the music and we liked it. And on these tapes, in one moment, I got Pere Ubu, Chrome, Dead Kennedys. I got just a lot of different stuff, very different music actually. Residents also. I didn't feel, I was 18, something. I didn't feel really any differences in this music. So for me, Residents and Sex Pistols, for example, just 2 extremes, was almost like the same new thing. Just new. It was new to me and new the same way, So FPB, the band, we started to cover these songs, and what happened was kind of absurd for punk bands. Now they call FPB one of the very first, or like godfathers of Czech punk, which might be true, but we played also the Residents, and that's not really punk music, And I didn't know lyrics, so I wrote Czech lyrics to that, and sometimes happened that I heard some song only on some party. I was some party and somebody was playing the song, and I heard just refrain, for example, and once only. And next day or 2 days later, it was in my mind like, oh, da 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 da, some whatever music like that, and I started to write songs. Like a cover song, but in fact it was almost like a new song because I only used that motif, but verses and all the other stuff and arrangement was mine, and so on and so on. So it was a very strange mixture of everything like that. And later we were encouraged to write our own songs, and I think when FPB ended, we had almost all songs our production.
A few years later, you joined jsme, doma, and now you're still with the group, and you're the only constant member for all that time. Could you compare the music that you guys do today to what you were doing in the mid-'80s? I mean, is it the same, similar, a lot different?
Well, it is slightly different, but I wouldn't call it different in terms of like a style or something. I think the style was kind of constituted on the very beginning, and I feel it like make it more and more precise, kind of, and more. So now definitely we play better, hopefully, and we also these arrangements are probably more complicated or more sophisticated. I don't know how to call it, and also lyrics are maybe more deep, like more poetry than on the beginning. It was more dada, I would say, and now it's more like a deep poetry. So these are differences, but in style, I wouldn't really call that we changed a lot. Which one example of that is that we still play some songs from '85. In the list of songs, you can find at least one, maybe two songs from very beginning. Anyway, So, and it matches together somehow. So that means to me that the change is not so strong as I say, in style or the feeling or drive or whatever, but it's much better played now. And also the way how I write these songs is different. I always wrote these songs to scores, always from the beginning, but I wrote it with piano or guitar or flute, or recorder. So I wrote it like that by hand, to scores and each person, and then we practice it on rehearsal room and so on, and we work on it. And now, many years I do it that I sit at home with my computer. I use MIDI. I'm not using instrument. I'm using only mouse and scores. And I put the note there. I listen to it. I like it. I keep it. If not, I change it and so on. And I go step by step like that. Then I'm finally done with all score. And then I print it as part, music part. And each person of band now, they get this part and they learn it, and we don't practice it actually. I don't remember even the last practice. People say, "Oh, you play so precisely. You must practice every day." I was like, "No, we practice at home. Every person separately."
That's truly amazing. I guess after the revolution happened, 1990 came, the borders opened, all that stuff. You must have really been ready to go and really ready to grab the opportunity to record, to tour.
That's right, and that saves me actually from career because it was probably maybe in February or March 1990, which is like 4 months after revolution and after my being spokesman. And we got offer from Globus Records from Austria, but actually owned by Czech person. And we went to studio. We recorded one album, and the same year, 3 months later, we got offer from Panton Records, and we recorded the second one. But we released the second one maybe 2 years later because we didn't want to put two records into 1 year because of business thing. But it was recorded in the same year, the first one, actually, first after revolution. Because we have a lot of material from past 5 years when we couldn't record anything, And so these two albums, I don't really feel as a regular band albums. It's like a paying debt of past. But the first really regular album, which means I wrote it, and we practiced it, and then we recorded it at the same time, and we played on stage. It was Hollywood, the third album in 1993, actually. But these first two we recorded immediately, and immediately also we got chance to play abroad, which was also impossible before revolution. First was Germany, and then Holland, Belgium, France, Italy, and so on. And then in '92 we first time went to US as well.
It's amazing to me how much you have played in the US. Over 800 gigs, I see, which must be like 700 at least more than any other Czech band. How did you succeed in making that connection with America that no other Czechs did?
We were lucky partly that we found a person who was able and willing and friendly doing that, organizing these tours for us. It was Patrick O'Donnell. And he came here actually in, I think it was maybe 94. And he came here and he offered to bring bands to his label, one thing, and also to tour in US. And he offered that to maybe 20 bands here. And he released an album which is called Checking In. And all these bands have one song there. So you can see until now which bands were asked, including Mjaga's Job, for example, which is now very famous here, but they never make it abroad. We've been in US in '92, like a cultural exchange. American artists came here, and then we went there, and we were chosen as a part of the group, that group of artists. And during that, I made a lot of contacts over there. Then in '94, I think January or something, I went on my private way to US again for like 2-3 months, and I went to West Coast and East Coast both, and I also started to make really seriously and precisely all possible contacts, and I bring our vinyls over there, and I spread it every venue. I went there personally, and I want to talk to owner, and every evening I made some records about that, like what I did and how it's possible, and what he told me that I have to call another person there, and so on. So I kind of created the whole net of theoretical people who are interested to have us. And then in that moment, Patrick came to Czech, and he said, "Oh, I want to make tours in US and to every band, but only me, I was prepared. I had all these contacts and everything. I said, okay, I have hundreds here, names who are interested, so just call them and do it, and we are ready to go." And it took maybe only 6 or 7 months later, and we went to first regular tour with Patrick, and then every year we went there twice, or sometimes it's even 3 times a year, for 30 shows each.
In some record stores, they put your albums in the world music section.
Yeah, that's right. I was talking about it. It's a story from. It's the biggest store on Times Square, a huge one, and we always went there. There was a huge part which was like alphabetical order there, and we were not there. We were in section world music because we sing in Czech. I felt that, but also I found in the section Iva Bitova. I found in the section, some more bands from here, some other bands as well. So I said, well, it's maybe how it is, But we always we want to be in the 12 alphabetical section, And one day happened, maybe 5 years took maybe something like that. And we finally came to that store, and we found under the letter U, we found UFO and U2, Uriah Heep, and jsme doma. Very happy about that.
In 1995, you were, I guess, the musical director for a show by the residents in Prague at Divadlo Archa, Freak Show. Tell us about your connection with the residents. I know it's very important for you. How did it begin?
Well, on the very beginning is my meeting with them. I mean, with the music, as I said, on these tapes and so on, And FPB also made 2 songs, from the residents, Santa Dog and Spot. And when we made our first album in 1990 and released it on Globus, I don't know where exactly, but I found somewhere address to manager of the residents, Rick Schupp. his address was in New York. And I wrote him a letter, and I made parcel with his album, and I sent it to him, and I asked him if he can pass it to the residents. I wrote the short letter that how we love them and how we met the music and so on, and that then finally we can release album, and I want to give them music which was inspired by them, definitely, partly. And 1 year, nothing happened. After 1 year, I got a letter, very long, maybe 2-3 pages long letter, signed by the residents. And they wrote many interesting things. I was very happy, of course, about that. And besides other things, they wrote some idea, which I never thought about that way. They said, well, there was an iron curtain between West and East, easy said. But that iron curtain has both sides. So if you didn't have any or very small information about what's going on in West, in culture, music, science, whatever, the same situation, maybe even worse, was opposite way. We don't know anything about your culture, about your music, your painters, whatever like that, And he wrote there, well, I wouldn't be surprised that when the Iron Curtain is gone now, that the huge stream of very interesting art will come to America or West generally, and many artists here, in US, will be inspired by your art. I tell you, that was so nice to read it. It was really huge encouragement. Really, for me, it was very important sentence, Maybe it was just polite, but I just felt it very strongly. And he said one compliment kind of there that I wouldn't be surprised if jsme doma will be in the middle of these influences. Huge compliment, to us. And in the end was, when you have just by chance way around San Francisco, you can visit us in our secret studios, something. We were laughing how we can get to US, to San Francisco. It was really it was nice to read it, but at the same time it was nonsense. But 1 year later, Linhart Foundation here in Prague organized that cultural exchange, and part of the American artist was Laurie Amat, who is singer of Freak Show. So I met her, I got in touch with her, I showed her the letter, and she said, yeah, I can introduce you, and so on. And probably she was the one who pushed a little bit to Linhart Foundation to choose us as a member of the cultural group from Czech coming to US. So 1992, we very unexpectedly we appeared in San Francisco, and I said, well, we are here, so we will use this letter as invitation to Secret Studios. And Laurie, of course, she helped us to get there. And finally, we met face to face, and we start to be very close friends. And every time we came to US, they always, if they can, they always came to the show. And of course, when they come here, I go even not only in Prague, but in Austria and Poland and whatever. I go to see them and so on. So since then, we are very, very close friends. And when 1995, Arca Theatre wanted to do, because the director, Ondřej Hrab, he was a very big fan of Residents too. So when they start to think about to make Freak Show live in Arca, kind of logical choose of musical director was me, because we already knew each other, and I spent then maybe 4 months in San Francisco sitting I was going there like to job, everyday job. There was the residence composer sitting by the computer, and in the morning at 9 or something I came there and I sit with him until 5 p.m. Then we went for beer somewhere, and every day like 3 months, it was a lot of work on it. But in the end, I rewrote 600 pages of score for 8-piece orchestra, and then I conducted the show as well. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about your other activities. You have taught film, including at FAMU. What aspect of filmmaking do you teach?
I was teaching on FAMU, yeah, that's right. But I was teaching music on FAMU. But that happened that way that on FAMU was director Aurel Klimt, who was graduated, or the last final exam or something, and his movie was Magic Bell, short movie, 15 minutes, and he asked Martin Velicek to make him art for the...
This guy does all your album covers and T-shirts and everything.
Yeah, but he liked Velicek first, maybe he didn't know even the band, And when he asked Velicek, so Velicek told him, yes, I will do it for you, but music has to be by Mirek. So okay, so I wrote music. Už jsme doma recorded music, and we made that movie, and it was really kind of successful. It was on some festivals abroad as well, and so on and so on. So Aurel later asked me if I will work with him and Velicek too on Film Forum, on the movie to cinemas, and we did that as well, and it was also kind of successful. So then I got offer from Zlín. There's some movie school as well, and they asked me if I want to teach their dramaturgy of music for animated movies. So I said okay, but there were no really textbook for that, so I have to write textbook, and I wrote about 300 pages textbook, and I taught there maybe 7, 8, maybe 9 years maybe, and during that they asked me in FAMU if I can, because they didn't have that. They have animated movies on FAMU, but not dramaturgy of music for animated movies, and they wanted to bring it to their students as well, and there is nobody who was teaching that kind of, because I kind of created that because I wrote the textbook, so they invited me to do the same. So maybe 2 years I taught on both schools.
Also, what's amazing to me is that you also worked on Večerní Czech. You did some series on Večerní Czech, which is the most popular children's animation show. It's part of everybody's life in this country.
Yeah, and I have to say very successful actually, this one, because it was about rats. It was done actually in Zlín, in those ateliers. And successful it was that way that when there was 50 years of Večerní Czech anniversary, so they were asking all kids, from adults to kids, like what's the most favorite fairy tale, and this series was number 1, made after revolution. There were several classic series before revolution, but what was made after revolution, this one was first.
Many thanks indeed to Miroslav Wanek of Jsme doma for speaking to me for this edition of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. If you're new to the pod and enjoyed our conversation, there are many, many more episodes out there for your listening pleasure. But for now, from me, Ian Willoughby, thank you so much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.